Good evening, everybody, and call the meeting to order. Good evening, anybody who following us online. I'm Councillor Ian Edwards, Leader of the Council, and I'm Chairman of Cabinet. And good evening, colleagues who have joined us. But I don't see any member of the public present, so we'll dispense with the notices around health and safety, and we'll get straight into the agenda. Apologies for absence, Mark.
Thank you. Apologies from Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you. And declarations of interest. Are there any additional declarations for this meeting, colleagues? None. Thank you. Approve the minutes of the last Cabinet meeting, pages 1 to 16. Are they agreed?
Agreed.
Okay, and item 4. This is to confirm that there are items of business in both parts 1, which is the public, and in part 2. To assist members of the public and to improve the transparency of our decision making, we have at item 8 a preview report that sets out in greater detail those items that are being considered under Part 2, but of course admitting the confidential information, but the decisions taken under Part 2 are also published. So if we can now get straight into the reports, the main items. Agenda item 5, the report from the former Properties, Highways and Transport Select Committee. Councillor Bianco.
Thank you, Leader. Well, slightly unusually, the chairman of said committee is not present tonight, so I won't be asking him to sit up and read the report, or introduce the report, I should say. Nonetheless, I think perhaps before I start, I would like to thank the select committee in question and pass my thanks back to them for their time, effort and input into this important piece of work. And you will see on page 18 and 19 a number, three main recommendations, but a number of sub-recommendations, if that's a fair term, which come directly from the committee's report. I think they're all self-explanatory. It's about improving how we do things and where we do things, and on that basis I'll keep it brief and move the recommendations.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bianco. This is an important area of work and activity. We are of course concerned about public safety outside our schools, and unfortunately we are restricted on the ability of our effectiveness of enforcement by the present legal framework. Hopefully that may be amended in the future, or make us more effective in our ability to enforce the restrictions. But notwithstanding these recommendations do suggest improvements that will be taken on board. Are the recommendations agreed, colleagues?
Agreed.
Thank you. Agenda item 6, social housing allocation policy. Councillor Lavery.
Thank you, Leader. The report for this begins on page 31. It is a pretty lengthy document if you want to work your way all the way through it. The important changes are contained within the summary at the front of the document. The back is effectively all the legal text that backs up the policy. The key here is that we are attempting to make policy more transparent for both members and residents. The effect of the current policy is that an awful lot of applicants end up bunched in bands A and B, particularly in band A, with an unrealistic expectation that I'm in A and therefore a council property is going to be forthcoming in the relatively near future. And that is in many cases not the case. So we're splitting the bands out now into smaller bands, so it will be much clearer to anyone where they actually sit in terms of allocation policy. We've taken the opportunities to do some tidying while we're doing it, but the essence of this is to really make clear where you are, and therefore it explains your likelihood and timescales in which you might get a property. It is subject obviously to consultation, and therefore the draft will go out for consultation and will come back to Cabinet in due course once we've received the results of that consultation.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lavery. It is absolutely important that we are far more transparent and more realistic in the information we give to people seeking social housing, and I hope that the improved clarity that this amended policy is proposing will deliver that. I'll welcome the feedback that we will receive from residents of how it might be further strengthened. Colleagues disagree to go to consultation?
Agree.
Thank you. Item 7, the monthly budget monitoring report. Councillor Goddard.
Thank you, Leader. This report, which is deliberately quite a bit slimmer and therefore hopefully rather more accessible than some of its predecessors, is set out in Pack B, and this deals with the Council's forecast of the financial position to the end of the 24-25 financial year as it stood at the 31st of May 2024. Month 2 of the financial year is always the most difficult position from which to determine a forecast, given that trends in demand and expenditure have yet to crystallise. What is clear, however, is that the potential for increased costs as a result of growing demand and inflation do appear to be unabated. We are, however, nearing the end of our zero-based budgeting process and expect to be in a position to reflect the benefits of this into our core cost estimates at the point where we report the results for month 4. In the meantime, the headline General Fund Revenue account reports a break-even position against budget. Homelessness support, adult social care and asylum provision continue to be areas of potential pressure. In aggregate, general balances and earmarked reserves are projected to amount to £35 million at the end of the 24-25 financial year. As reported last month, in addition to reserves, we are carrying £8 million in hitherto unutilised capital receipts. Our programme of savings comprises £5.7 million of measures carried over from 23-24, together with £15.8 million of new initiatives in respect of 24-25, thus in total £21.5 million. £6.8 million of these savings have already been delivered or are in the final stages of delivery. The General Fund capital expenditure budget for the financial year amounts to £95.3 million, and a favourable cost variance of £2.3 million has been identified and recognised thus far. As suggested in last month's report, I'm recommending to Cabinet that £39.3 million of capital expenditure not achieved in 23-24 be rephased and added to the current year's budget. I am able to report some encouraging progress for the dedicated schools grant, in that cost rationalisation measures agreed and delivered have had the effect of reducing the forecast in-year deficit for the current financial year by £9.5 million. However, it must be recognised that even after taking account of these improvements, the in-year deficit for 24-25 is still projected to be £16.1 million, and this is as a result of the underfunding of the statutorily imposed duties by central government. The housing revenue account is currently projected to be within budget for the 24-25 year. Housing revenue account capital expenditure for the 24-25 year is budgeted at £148 million, but my proposed rephasing of 23-24 underspends will increase this by £22.8 million if accepted by Cabinet this evening. I therefore move recommendation 1 of the report as set out on page 2 of Pack B. Recommendation 2 is detailed in Part B of the pack and is set out on page 18. This comprises 4 financially oriented recommendations, itemised A to D, 2 of which comprise the aforementioned capital rephasing proposals, and all of which are self-explanatory. I therefore move both of these recommendations. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, Councillor Goddard. Are those 2 recommendations agreed?
Yeah, agreed.
Thank you. Agenda item 8 is the public preview of matters to be considered in private, and I would draw particular attention to agenda item 9 that is mentioned in this report, which is the disposal of Borough Hall. This is a much treasured local heritage property in Hayes for which the council didn't have a use, and rather than us artificially creating a use for that building, thereby adding to our costs, we have arrived at a very good outcome by agreeing to sell the property for educational purposes that will not only strengthen our educational offer within the borough, but will retain the use of that much valued heritage building. I ask that colleagues note agenda item 8. The report noted?
Noted.
Thank you. We now move to part 2, please.